Hey everybody, in the video you're about to watch, I talk a lot about the issues that I have with content algorithms. So it only makes sense that it should be sponsored by Nebula, one of the few platforms left on the internet with content curated by real people rather than algorithms. If you want to give it a shot and support my channel, the best way to do so is by following the link in the description, which also gives you full access to CuriosityStream, who are also sponsoring this video. Following that link gets you all sorts of other perks too, including early access to my videos, being able to easily download them, streaming in higher quality, and watching them ad-free. Stick around after the video to learn more, and if you like this video, maybe think about subscribing. Sometime in the mid-2010s, pretty much every social media platform introduced a feature called infinite scrolling. No longer contained to pages, our news feeds became sprawling dives into a bottomless pit, falling endlessly downward into content. A few years later, those same sites stopped displaying news feeds in chronological order. That way you'd never know when you were caught up to your feed, so you could just scroll on forever. The impetus for both of these decisions was the same: to exploit the dopamine response in our brains and make it harder and harder for us to look away. Places that were once a check-in to see how your friends were doing transformed into all-consuming feeds. They became our default source for knowledge, news, art, and entertainment. They became windows opening us up to the unfolding world in real time. And through those windows, we began to gaze endlessly into everything.
Now.
In 2013, as the infinite scroll was taking over social media platforms, Arcade Fire were already beginning to question our era of media oversaturation. That year, they released Reflector, an album full of questions about the implications that modern technology has on our lives. It was celebrated by some, including myself, as the high point of their career. But when they followed up on those same themes on their next album, Everything Now, they were met with mixed reviews. Many people found the band's cautionary tales about the internet to be trite and overblown. Some considered Everything Now a lesser retread of territory already explored thoroughly on Reflector. For a long time, I considered myself among those. But then, in the spring of 2021, I found myself revisiting the album after experiencing another piece of media that touches on many of the same themes. How does one talk about Inside? Bo Burnham's lockdown-inspired musical comedy special is, well, it's everything. It's hilarious, depressing, cutting-edge and experimental, raw and relatable. It's an intimate portrait of a vulnerable artist that simultaneously captures the ongoing dread of an entire generation. Framed around being stuck inside during the coronavirus pandemic, Bo Burnham's special shows an artist's slow decline as the world gets increasingly more terrifying. That decline manifests in a loss of hygiene, motivation, creative capacity, and ultimately, mental stability. It's a decline that a lot of us felt over the last few years in some way or another as we were forced to shift our lives inside. That shift helped to accelerate another transformation that was already happening in our culture. The move from existing, interacting, and creating culture primarily in the physical world to doing so in the digital world. As the pandemic drove us all inside, the internet became not just the easiest venue for social interaction, but the only one. And as someone whose career was kickstarted from viral videos, Bo Burnham is uniquely qualified to comment on our existence in the digital world. Throughout Inside, he does just that. One of the most discussed aspects of the COVID lockdown was the sheer isolation of it all. In Inside, Bo Burnham shows this isolation through his cinematography. He's frequently framed alone in the dark with his face lit by the light of a screen. But of course, one of the many paradoxes of our digital age is that even when you're alone, you're not alone. Because behind that glowing screen light is a vivid public world full of people constantly sharing their lives and peering in on yours. I think Arcade Fire summed up this phenomenon perfectly in the title track to Reflector.
Alone in the darkness, darkness of why we fell in love, alone on a stage, in the reflective age.
Throughout that song, Arcade Fire criticized one of the big promises of the internet. We were told that these communications technologies would bring us closer together and create a world where we would never really need to be alone. And sometimes it can feel like we're so close to that. But in a world driven by social media and monetized content algorithms, that connection always seems to fall flat.
I found the connector. Just a reflector.
In theory, the internet world should have meant that a global quarantine wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But all of us quickly learned the pains of Zoom fatigue and the struggle of trying to connect through technology. In Inside, Bo Burnham displays these in both sexting and FaceTime with my mom, where we can see technology getting in the way of our attempts to fulfill our most basic human needs. This loneliness is exacerbated by the public nature of the internet. When we live on a stage, we don't display our true selves to our friends. We project a constructed identity. Bo Burnham explores this kind of constant performance in White Woman's Instagram. While on the surface the song seems like a simple send-up of Instagram tropes, it actually doesn't look down on Instagram culture entirely. In the middle of the piece, we see Burnham's character opening up emotionally as the screen itself opens up with an aspect ratio change.
It's been a decade since you've been gone. Mama, I miss you. I miss sitting with you in the front yard, still figuring out how to keep living without you. It's got a little better, but it's still hard. Mama,
It's as if the real humanity is breaking free from the constraints of social media, getting a desperate moment of authenticity and connection before being boxed right back in. In the climax to Inside, All Eyes on Me, Bo Burnham literalizes the feeling of being alone on a stage.
We're going to go where everybody knows, everybody knows. Get your fucking hand up, get on out of your seat. All eyes on me, all eyes on me. Hey,
We live in a world where everyone is hyper aware of the facts of their own observation. And as a result, we're alienated and isolated, clawing desperately for shreds of connection. So while the world spirals out of control, we search for an escape. And we find that escape in content.
but look, I made you some content. Daddy made you your favorite open wide. Here comes the content.
Bo Burnham opens Inside with a song aptly named Content. With the rise of social media, we've entered the age of content. Everybody is a content creator, and everybody is a content consumer. And when you're stuck inside, why wouldn't you be?
It's a beautiful day to stay inside.
As Arcade Fire put it, we live in a world of infinite content. The internet has delivered us with an abundance of riches, a world where there's always something to watch, always something to read, always something to listen to, and always something to learn. It seems like this is a good thing, and in a lot of ways it is, but the reality isn't that simple. Bo Burnham depicts the dark side of this reality an hour or so into Inside, in Welcome to the Internet. Parading as the ringleader of a twisted algorithmic circus, Burnham welcomes you to experience all of the internet's splendors.
Welcome to the internet. Have a look around. Anything that brain of yours can think of can be found. We've got mountains of content, some better, some worse. If none of it's of interest to you, you'd be the first.
At first, his descriptions seem to be non sequiturs about the absurd content that you can find on the internet.
Welcome to the internet. Put your cares aside. Here's a tip for straining pasta. Here's a 9-year-old who died. We got movies and doctors and fantasy sports and a bunch of colored pencil drawings of all the different characters in Harry Potter fucking each other. Welcome to the internet.
But in time, the sinister nature of this flood of content reveals itself. Seemingly detached images link together as Bo Burnham displays the internet's terrifying ability to radicalize.
Here's a healthy breakfast option. You should kill your mom. Here's why women never fuck you. Here's how you can build a bomb. Which Power Ranger are you? Take this quirky quiz. Obama sent the immigrants to vaccinate your kids.
In the darkest moments of the song, the ringmaster offers you the Faustian bargain of the internet.
Could I interest you in everything all of the time? A bit of everything all of the time. Apathy's a tragedy and boredom is a crime.
On the surface, everything all of the time would seem to be a boon. The utopian promise of the internet come to life. But in reality, this flood of everything is overwhelming. It hijacks and shortens our attention spans, feeding quick impulses of rage or pleasure into your brain. It takes away the hard work of interacting with people or meeting art on its own terms, and replaces that with empty calories, algorithmically generated dopamine hits that keep you hooked to the screen. Rather than filling us up, this flood of everything creates a deep emptiness. That feeling is at the core of Everything Now, as displayed by the title track. Behind the joyous disco beat of the song, the lyrics are filled with melancholy.
The sky's got a star. Every inch of skin's got a scar. I guess you got everything now.
It's the kind of malaise that comes from scrolling through 1,000 movies on Netflix and still finding nothing that appeals to you. It's the hollow feeling that comes when you realize that you've just spent 2 of your precious free hours doom scrolling. And yet, as horrible as this maximalist life makes us feel, we're addicted to it.
Stop pretending you got everything now. I need it. I want it. I can't live without it. I can't live without it.
The cost of this addiction is lost happiness, lost time. It's the lost artworks that could have been made in place of staring into the void. It's the lost chances at genuinely fulfilling human relationships in the real world.
Every inch of space in my heart. There was something I'll never start. The ashes of everything.
Toward the end of Inside, Bo Burnham puts a name to this hollow sensation that our world of infinite content has created. He calls it that funny feeling.
There it is again, that funny feeling. That funny feeling.
In That Funny Feeling, Bo Burnham repeats the lyrical structure of Welcome to the Internet. It's a song made up of seemingly disjointed images of the world today, a depiction of the never-ending flow of content pouring into our brains every time we look at a screen.
Carpool karaoke, Steve Aoki, Logan Paul. A gift shop at the gun range, a mass shooting at the mall.
No particular phrase is given more or less emphasis. The result is something akin to scrolling through a news feed, where you'll see memes and content right next to horrific stories of our collapsing society. The entire song is tinged with the sort of resignation that can only come from doom scrolling through endless content, watching our world burn down in real time.
Sat on a pear in summer air in early fall. The quiet comprehending of the ending of it all.
One might think that the response to this reality would be fear or panic, and that's certainly there, but mostly it's just numbness. The endless numbness that so many of us wake up to every day and go to sleep to every night. So what happens when an entire generation grows up alone on a stage and loses themselves in infinite content? Mental illness. Mental illness is one of the defining traits of Burnham's millennial generation. And honestly, can you blame us? We've grown up in a world shaped by hyper-capitalist content algorithms that do not care a lick for us. And in our adult lives, we've come face to face with the resurgence of fascism, the impending climate apocalypse, a global pandemic, and several once-in-a-generation economic collapses. Throughout Inside, Bo Burnham captures this millennial malaise and endemic mental illness. Often in songs like All Time Low, 30, or Shit, it's shrouded in a sort of ironic self-awareness.
Wake up at 11:30, feeling like a bag of shit. Oh no! All my clothes are dirty, so I'm smelling like a bag of shit. Go to pour my coffee and I miss my cup. OMG, that is just my luck. Look in the mirror, say, what's up, you useless fuck?
That self-awareness comes from living life on a stage, constantly conscious of our peers' prying eyes. But when you cut through those levels of irony, the reality becomes clear. So many people are hurting. I know I'm hurting. I lose sleep every night over the collapse of the world. I'm constantly anxious about a future that I feel I have zero control over. I go through bouts of anxiety and depression. I've hidden authentic suicidal thoughts with ironic jokes, and I know a lot of my friends have experienced the same pain. In the back half of Inside, we see Bo Burnham talk openly about his own struggles with mental illness.
So, 5 years ago, I quit performing live comedy because I was beginning to have severe panic attacks while on stage, which is not a great place to have them. So I quit.
People are scared and lonely watching the world fall apart through tiny screens in the palm of our hands. For Arcade Fire, this problem is exacerbated by the promise of fame. As they sing about in Creature Comfort, fame and fortune are seen as escapes from this pain.
God, make me famous. If you can, just make it painless.
And that's part of the promise that content platforms give you. You can make your own fame, you can be your own celebrity and escape all of this. But that escape is a lie. It's a constructed reality created by people performing and driven by content algorithms. And all of this brings us to the last elephant in the room, the force driving all of this.
Jeffrey Bezos, Jeffrey Bezos, Jeffrey Bezos.
Well, I don't think that capitalism can be entirely blamed for all the issues we're talking about in this video. I think it's exacerbated a whole lot of them. And it would seem that Bo Burnham does as well.
You know, maybe allowing giant digital media corporations to exploit the neurochemical drama of our children for profit, you know, maybe that was a bad call.
Through songs like How the World Works, Unpaid Intern, and Bezos, Burnham is clearly pointing a finger at late capitalism. At its core, the economic system that runs our world has reached a point of total commodification. Absolutely everything and absolutely everybody is a product to be bought or sold. Our attention has been commodified, our human interactions have been commodified, even our very identities have been commodified, turning into cogs helping to grease the wheels of a few powerful, uncaring machines. While Arcade Fire's work might not be as explicitly anti-capitalist in its themes, they're definitely there. The sample at the heart of everything now comes from the Coffee Cola song, a deeply anti-capitalist protest song from the Cameroonian musician Francis Bebey.
They keep dreaming of war, men hate and crime everywhere. That is the way they can find the money they need to buy coffee cola.
Now, I can already hear some of the comments. You claim to hate capitalism and yet you participate in it. Curious. Yeah, this is true. And it's something Bo Burnham himself is aware of and brings up throughout Inside. He's constantly probing at the question of how one is supposed to make art in this world. From the opening moments, he's aware that he'll be viewed as a content creator first and a human second. In comedy, he questions the point of doing jokes against a collapsing world.
If you wake up in a house that's full of smoke, don't panic. Call me and I'll tell you a joke. If you see white men dressed in white cloaks, don't panic. Call me and I'll tell you a joke. Oh shit, should I be joking at a time like this?
In criticizing himself and his own art, Burnham is asking a much broader question. What responsibility do artists have for their art? Is it irresponsible to be telling jokes and making songs that feed into the content algorithm in a world that has been so ravaged by infinite content? And if it is, then what else is Burnham supposed to do? For Burnham, like many artists, creating is how he puts a roof over his head, how he puts food in his belly. But chances are it goes deeper than that. I know that for me, creating art provides meaning in my life. I am a creator for all the ugly baggage that word carries with it. And that means that for me, like for Bo Burnham, some significant portion of my identity is tied to these content algorithms. Arcade Fire have similar questions about their own baggage. They're a band criticizing the overblown fame of their world, but they're doing so from a podium that fame put them on. In Creature Comfort, they bring up this paradox with a striking image: somebody trying to commit suicide while listening to their music.
Assisted suicide. She dreams about dying all the time. She told me she came so close, filled the bathtub and put on our first record.
What does it mean to make art that somebody considers killing themselves to? What does it mean to make content in a world where infinite content is helping people spiral into the void? How do you create in the face of the apocalypse? These are questions that I ask myself every day. Is the best use of my time and energy really continuing this Matryoshka doll of making content about content about content? Aren't there enough video essays out there analyzing Bo Burnham already? Probably. And maybe by making content about Inside, I'm missing the entire point of the special. But I do think that when taken as a whole, Inside offers a potential path as to how you're supposed to create for this infinite world. Make honest art. In the early moments of Inside, it seems as though it's going to be a special full of detached irony. But as it presses on, Bo Burnham bears more and more of his soul. He's not bound by the conventions of a stand-up special or film. He carves his own path and makes something that is painfully raw, honest, and vulnerable. Does he solve any problems by doing so? Probably not. But nobody can solve the problems of the world on our own. All that we can do as artists is show the world as we see it. Open our hearts up and hope that we can provide some semblance of solace to somebody who feels as scared and numb and broken and alone as we do. In the penultimate track, Goodbye, Burnham offers an invitation to the audience.
Hey, here's a fun idea. How about I sit on the couch and I watch you next time? I wanna hear you tell a joke when no one's laughing in the background.
One way that we can cope with the dread of the world that we live in is by creating, by making something funny, by making something interesting, by making something beautiful. I want to bring this video home with a famous quote from my favorite writer, Neil Gaiman.
Sometimes life is hard. Things go wrong. In life, and in love, and in business, and in friendship, and in health, and in all the other ways that life can go wrong. And when things get tough, this is what you should do. Make good art.
So that's what I'm trying to do with this video. For Neil Gaiman, for Arcade Fire, for Bo Burnham, for you, I'm trying to make the best art that I can. And if you're feeling the stress and pressure that this world puts on all of us, if you're feeling consumed by thoughts of existential dread, if you're feeling like there is no escape to this, then I invite you to do the same. Go out and make honest art. Art that speaks to your experience of the world, and if you're not afraid to share it, maybe it can help all of us feel at least a little bit less alone. If you want to help me continue to make the art that I've been making, one of the single best ways that you can do that is by supporting Nebula. Nebula is a platform designed to put creators first. It's got far better payouts than YouTube, and it's a place where our videos aren't subject to the whims of the algorithm. Beyond that, it's also just a really incredible platform with an ever-growing list of originals. And if you sign up to Nebula with the link in the description, you'll also get access to CuriosityStream, where you'll be able to watch thousands of documentaries on all sorts of topics. Lately, CuriosityStream has been really amping up their music documentaries, which obviously has me excited. One of these new documentaries is Contemporary Color, which shows the creation of an incredible live experience put on by the legendary David Byrne in the 2010s. Or you can check out Red Elvis, the Cold War Cowboy, which tells the story of an American musician who defected to the Soviet Union in the Cold War to become a Soviet pop star. If you want to check out those documentaries and more, you can get 26% off an annual subscription to CuriosityStream by following the link in the description. That'll also give you full access to Nebula, and honestly, even just checking that link out does a whole lot to support my channel. So thank you all so much for watching.